There is a brutal truth that very few people dare to face. You do not truly know who you are. You live your entire life with a name, a profession, a social role, but these are merely fragile shells covering a vast emptiness within. Carl Jung, the greatest psychoanalyst of the 20th century, once warned, "The world will ask you who you are, and if you do not know, the world will tell you." Most of us are living someone else's life. We borrow the desires of our parents, copy the fears of society, and fake the joys of the crowd. But deep in the darkness of the unconscious, a treasure lies sleeping. A gift you have carried since the moment of conception, waiting for the day it would be awakened. That gift is not a talent to be flaunted. It is a psychological structure that shapes your destiny. If you do not find it, you will forever remain a stranger in your own soul. The question is not whether you possess this gift. The question is, do you have the courage to look into the darkness and reclaim what belongs to you? Why does your life feel like a song played in the wrong key? Have you ever felt a nameless sense of alienation, even while standing in the happiest of crowds? Have you ever worked a job, loved a person, or pursued a goal that your logic said was right, but your intuition screamed was not your place? That is not depression, that is not weakness. It is an existential crisis, a rupture between the social ego and the true self. In modern society, we are obsessed with image. We polish our social persona every day until it becomes perfect, sharp, and accepted. But the price of that perfection is the paralysis of the soul. When you focus too much on becoming who the world wants you to be, you inadvertently reject the core parts of yourself. Jung called this process repression. The traits you deem bad, inappropriate, or different are pushed down into the shadow region of the unconscious. But the cruel truth is, your spiritual gift often lies exactly where you fear the most. If you are a person with keen intuition but grew up in an environment that valued dry logic, you buried that intuition. If you have a deep capacity for empathy but were considered weak, you built a calloused wall to protect yourself. The result is psychological fragmentation. You feel empty, exhausted, and meaningless, not because you lack material things, but because you have severed the life force from the unconscious. The problem is not that you lack a gift. The problem is that you are sitting on a treasure chest yet complaining about your poverty, simply because you are afraid of the light that shines when you open it. To understand why the spiritual gift is forgotten, we must dissect the structure of the human mind through the lens of Jungian psychoanalysis. Our mind is not just the consciousness we control, it is like a floating iceberg. The visible part, consciousness, is only a fraction. The submerged part, the unconscious, is where the true power lies. Your spiritual gift does not reside in the conscious realm. It sprouts from the collective unconscious, a treasury of memories and experiences of the entire human race inherited through generations. This is where archetypes are stored, primordial psychological patterns. Every person is born with their own soul map drawn by dominant archetypes. Some carry the archetype of the healer, some the seer, others the witness. But as soon as you step into the world, society begins to impose different patterns upon you. This process creates a defense mechanism called the persona. The persona is the mask you wear to adapt. But when the persona becomes too thick, it blocks communication between consciousness and the unconscious. The spiritual gift, a signal from the unconscious, is intercepted. Worse, the mechanism of projection causes you to see your own gift in others. You admire an artist for their creativity, a therapist for their empathy, unaware that you possess those very seeds. You project your own light outward, making your interior dark. The journey to reclaim the spiritual gift is actually the journey of individuation, the process of integrating the parts of the soul to become a whole, undivided entity. It is when you lower the persona mask, confront the shadow, and accept the gift from the unconscious. The soul does not step into life like a blank sheet of paper. It carries scars and songs from thousands of years ago, waiting for you to sing them again. Think back to your early years. Before you could read, write, or knew how to please your parents, you had very distinct reactions. There were children who could sit for hours looking at a flower, as if communicating with an invisible world. There were children sensitive enough to scream when they felt tension in the room, though no one spoke a word. And there were children who dreamed strange dreams of places they had never been. Most parents call that just being a child, but through the lens of depth psychology, those were the first signals of a spiritual gift trying to escape the shell of the collective unconscious. Jung believed that we inherit not just biological genes, but a psychological structure. The collective unconscious holds the entire life experience of our ancestors. When you are born, you are not just a separate individual. You are a knot in the psychological flow of an entire lineage, an entire race. Sudden intuitions, irrational fears, or vague yearnings are actually echoes of the unconscious. They are remnants of ancestral experiences. For example, a child born into a family with a tradition of healing or spiritual leadership may carry a spiritual inclination stored in the collective unconscious. That is not simply a biological genetic factor, but a transfer of psychic energy patterns. Consider the story of Maria. She grew up in a family skeptical of spirituality. Her parents were engineers valuing data and logic, but from childhood, Maria knew things before they happened. She knew when the phone would ring, or sensed when someone in the family was about to have an accident. At first, she was afraid. She thought she was going crazy. She buried that ability deep down, trying to live a normal life. But as she grew older, she felt increasingly lonely and hollow. She was successful in her career, but her soul withered. At age 35, after a severe existential crisis, Maria decided to face her fear. She began recording her hunches instead of ignoring them. Gradually, she realized the ability hadn't vanished. It was just dormant. When she accepted it, she not only found peace but was able to help many around her with intuitive advice. Maria's case illustrates the concept of psychic energy. Psychic energy cannot be destroyed, it can only be transformed or repressed. When Maria rejected her gift, that energy turned into symptoms of anxiety and depression. When she accepted and integrated it, that energy became a source of creativity and healing. The unconscious is not a terrifying black hole. It is a silent companion, constantly trying to send letters to your consciousness through dreams, hunches, and emotions. The harsh truth is, most of us have been socialized to become spiritually blind and deaf. We are taught how to calculate profit, but not how to listen to the whispers of the soul. We are stripped of our gifts when we are small, and then spend our whole lives searching for them in faraway places. Your shadow may be the very place hiding your most precious gift. Your fear of being different is precisely what distinguishes you from billions of others. But how do you know what your gift is? Is what you are feeling just imagination, or is it truth? What you call strange about yourself may actually be the native language your soul uses to communicate with the universe. We often expect a spiritual gift to arrive in a glamorous form, the ability to see the future, heal with hands, or super memory. But reality is crueler and far more fascinating. A spiritual gift rarely knocks on your consciousness with loud noises. It creeps into your life through the smallest cracks of reason, moments when you let go of control. It appears in dreams, in sudden hunches, or in a silent pain you cannot name. To recognize it, you must stop looking with your physical eyes and start seeing with your psychological structure. The first and most common form is the awakening of intuition. In Jungian terms, this is the manifestation of the seer archetype. But do not confuse spiritual intuition with intelligent guessing. Intuition is an irrational function. It does not rely on data or logic, which belongs to thinking. Intuition is the ability to grasp the entire picture in a split second through a subliminal process that consciousness does not perceive. Have you ever walked into a room and instantly felt a chill or warmth, though nothing in the surroundings seemed unusual? That is not a ghost. It is your unconscious scanning thousands of micro signals, scent, a glance, posture, breathing rhythm, and synthesizing them into an immediate conclusion. Those with a strong archetype of the seer are often labeled by society as oversensitive or neurotic. In reality, they possess a psychological radar system operating at a higher frequency than normal. Their fear is not a sickness. It is the price paid for receiving too much information from the environment without a protective filter. Consider the case of N was a financial investor. His job demanded dry logic and complex forecasting models. But he had a secret he had never told anyone. He made the biggest decision of his life based on a gut feeling. Once all the data showed an investment deal was perfect. His analysis team agreed, but when he picked up the pen to sign and felt sudden nausea. There was no reason. He delayed the signing. 3 days later, that company was involved in a massive accounting scandal and collapsed. And saved his firm from disaster, but instead of trusting his intuition, he feared it. He viewed it as luck or an anomaly. Jung would call N's experience the uprising of a differentiated function. When intuition crosses the threshold of the ego's control, it becomes an independent channel of information, and this threatens the ego. The second form, and the most misunderstood, is the capacity for deep empathy. This is the domain of the healer archetype. There is a fragile boundary between healthy empathy and emotional contagion. A person with this type of spiritual gift does not just understand another's pain, they live in that pain. In modern psychology, we speak of mirror neurons. But for those with the gift of healing, their mirror neuron system operates at maximum intensity. They absorb the emotions of others like a sponge. This leads to a tragic paradox. Those with the greatest capacity for healing are often the ones who suffer the most because they have not learned to set energetic boundaries. Are you the person friends always seek to confide in, though you never wanted to be? Do you ever leave a conversation feeling drained, headachy, or even nauseous for no clear reason? That is not you being weak. That is you performing an unconscious psychic transference. You are carrying the emotional burden of others so they can feel lighter, but you are being buried under that weight. The harsh truth here is, your gift is killing you if you are not conscious of it. When intuition is not honored, it turns into paranoid anxiety. When empathy is uncontrolled, it turns into burnout and self-destruction. The shadow of the gift is chaos. If you do not actively use the gift, it will use you. It will turn you into a slave to others' emotions or a victim of unrelenting hunches. Finally, we must speak of the most mystical path, dreams. Jung once said, dreams are the small letters from the unconscious. For an ordinary person, a dream is the brain's garbage disposal. But for a person with a spiritual gift, dreams are a limbo, a meeting place where consciousness and the unconscious intersect. These individuals often have vivid, recurring, or prophetic dreams. They wake up with intense emotions that reality cannot explain. In dreams, the collective unconscious uses symbolism to communicate. A snake is not just a snake, it is rebirth. A collapsed house is not just an accident, it is the crumbling of old beliefs. If you consistently ignore these dreams, you are refusing to read the most important letters sent to you. And the unconscious will keep sending them, louder and more intense each time, until you are forced to listen, often in the form of a nervous breakdown or physical illness. Man does not attain enlightenment by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. You think realizing a spiritual gift would be pure joy. You are wrong. Most people, when they touch the water's edge of the unconscious, run away. Why? Because the gift lies right within their greatest fear. When your intuition becomes strong, the first reaction is not excitement, but self-doubt. Am I going crazy? Am I imagining this? When the capacity for empathy opens, the first fear is, I will be hurt, people will use me. This is the defense mechanism of the ego. The ego loves stability and control. A spiritual gift coming from the boundless, unpredictable unconscious is a direct threat to the ego's throne. Carl Jung defined the shadow as the sum of everything we refuse to acknowledge in ourselves. These are traits society deems negative: greed, jealousy, selfishness, but also positive traits we dare not own: creativity, power, spirituality. When you begin to access the spiritual gift, the shadow counterattacks. It does not attack from the outside. It attacks from within through the inner critic. But deeper, the shadow stores unhealed trauma. If your gift is the ability to heal, it means you were once deeply wounded. If your gift is prophecy, it means you once experienced utter powerlessness and craved control. Jung's formula is clear: the wound is the place where the light enters. But before the light enters, you must face the wound. And that is excruciating. Lan was a talented artist. As a child, Lan could see colors in music and emotions, a form of synesthesia. But Lan's family was poor and practical. They told her art was useless and her hallucinations were madness. Lan buried that ability. She became an accountant. She lived safely but suffered from chronic migraines and mild depression. Every year her shadow, the rejected artist, appeared in nightmares of torn paintings. At age 40, a turning point occurred. She was fired. With no persona left to hide behind, Lan fell into an existential crisis. She had nothing left to lose. She picked up the brush again. The first days were terrifying. Lan trembled. She feared her own paintings. Why? Because they painted the pain she had avoided her whole life. But in the journey of painting that darkness, her spiritual gift burst forth. Lan's paintings were not just beautiful, they healed the viewer. She transmuted pain into art. That is the process of shadow integration. You do not destroy the shadow, you embrace it. You admit, yes, I have fear, I have wounds, but I do not run. Your greatest fear is the map to your gift. Are you afraid of public speaking? Perhaps your gift is the power to inspire. Do you fear loneliness? Perhaps your gift is the capacity for deep connection with the inner world. Do you fear chaos? Perhaps your gift is the ability to bring order to the minds of others. If you retreat from the fear, you retreat from your own destiny. You will live a safe life, but it will be the life of a walking corpse. Your soul will gradually wither in the dark, and the gift will return to the collective unconscious, waiting for another life. The mind is a brilliant liar, but the body and emotions never know how to lie. You are standing at a crossroads. One voice tells you to turn left, another says turn right. Which is intuition, which is fear? This is the question that stalls millions. In the age of information overload, our minds are overwhelmed. We confuse neurotic anxiety with spiritual intuition. Mistaking one for the other can lead to disastrous decisions, or worse, falling into grandiosity. Jung and later psychologists identified a core difference in the quality of the inner message. Fear comes from the ego. It is rationalizing or catastrophizing. Its sound is noisy, repetitive, urgent, and shrill. It feels like a blaring alarm siren. The bodily sensation is tightness in the chest, a constricted throat, a racing heart. It paralyzes you or makes you want to flee. Conversely, intuition comes from the unconscious or self. It is a direct knowing. Its sound is still, gentle, but heavy. It feels like a sudden realization, requiring no debate. The bodily sensation is relaxation, lightness, or a vibrating confirmation in the gut or heart. Even if the information is negative, the body feels right. Fear says, don't take that flight, the plane will crash. You'll die, didn't you see the news? Intuition says, don't take that flight. A short, cold command, no explanation. You just know you shouldn't go. To distinguish them, you must practice psychological disidentification. Imagine you are sitting on a riverbank. Thoughts, fears, and hunches are leaves floating on the water. Fear will be dead leaves, moving chaotically, crashing into each other. Intuition will be a sturdy log drifting slowly, steadily. When a thought arises, ask yourself, is this thought trying to convince me of something, or is it just passing by? Fear always needs your endorsement. It asks, am I right? Intuition needs no endorsement, it stands there. It exists, it awaits action. Similarly, for sensitive people, how do you know if you are empathizing or being infected by emotion? Emotional contagion leaves you confused and drained when you leave the person. Genuine empathy allows you to feel their pain, but keep your center. You feel a surge of compassion to act. After helping, you feel relief and satisfaction, not exhaustion. The most dangerous confusion is when the ego hijacks the spiritual gift. This creates a messiah complex. You start believing you are chosen, possessing powers greater than others. That is when the gift becomes a prison of delusion. A truly awakened soul is always accompanied by deep humility. The more you know, the smaller you realize you are before the mystery of the unconscious. You do not find a spiritual gift by searching for it. You find it by removing the layers of worldly dust covering it. We have traveled through the deep lands of the unconscious, faced the shadow, and learned to listen. But psychological knowledge, if not actualized, is just an illusion. You cannot think your way to the destination, you must walk. Many ask, I know I have a gift, but where do I start? The answer does not lie in complex rituals. It lies in returning to the simplest things. Jung believed the process of individuation is an empirical journey requiring active consciousness. The first step is active observation. Most of us live in a state of sleepwalking. You need to practice the observing ego. For the next 3 days, carry a small notebook. Record 3 moments in the day where you felt a strange vibration. Do not analyze. Do not try to decode why, just record what. Analyzing too early activates the ego's censorship, distorting the message from the unconscious. When you record these fragments, you are telling the unconscious, I am listening, and the unconscious will respond by sending clearer signals. After the data collection phase, you enter the second step, pattern recognition. A spiritual gift does not operate randomly, it operates by law. When you look back at your notes, you will see synchronicities. Jung defined synchronicity as meaningful coincidence. You are wondering whether to change careers, and for 3 days you continuously see articles about art therapy, dream of paintings, and meet a stranger who mentions the word creativity. That is not random. That is the collective unconscious screaming at you. In this step, you need to find the red thread. If your notes revolve around feeling others' pain, you are touching the healer archetype. If they revolve around future hunches, you are touching the seer archetype. Recognition means you can name your gift. When you name it, you grant it existence in the real world. The final step is the most important, reality testing. Jung always emphasized, we only really know what we actually do. You cannot know if your intuition is accurate if you never use it. Set up a small spiritual experiment. If you think you have intuition, make a small decision this week based only on the first feeling. See the result. This is where the ego will resist most fiercely. It will fear, what if I'm wrong? But this is the crux. A spiritual gift is not a magic bullet, it is a muscle. You must go to the gym for it, you will be wrong. But in that error, you will learn to fine-tune the signal. Many stop here because they want perfection. They want the gift to work like instant magic. But the truth is, a spiritual gift is like a sharp knife. If you do not constantly sharpen it with practice, it will dull and rust. You must accept the risk of error to gain the reward of understanding. When you begin to use your gift, a strange change will occur. When you live honestly with your inner self, the universe is no longer a blocking wall, it becomes a river carrying you toward your destination. Carl Jung spent a large part of his later life studying the phenomenon of synchronicity. He realized that when an individual enters the process of individuation, living true to their true nature, strange coincidences begin to happen with higher frequency. Imagine you are a radio transmitter. Before, you broadcast chaotically on many different frequencies. The chaotic world around you mirrored that chaos, but when you find your spiritual gift and live by it, you become still. You broadcast a single, clear frequency, and suddenly you attract the events, people, and opportunities of that same frequency. The first principle to keep the synchronous flow unbroken is, the gift is to serve, not to flaunt. If you use the spiritual gift to satisfy the ego, to show off, to manipulate, you will sever the connection with the unconscious. The unconscious is humble and selfless. When you use the gift to serve the community, heal others, or create beauty, you are in the flow of the collective unconscious. Energy will be continuously replenished. The second principle is accepting the blindness of the future. Living with a spiritual gift demands an adventurous spirit. You will never have a clear map. Intuition only tells you the next step, not the whole path. If you demand certainty before acting, you are killing intuition. The third principle, especially for those with the gift of empathy, is boundaries and self-protection. Jung warned of psychic infection. When you open your soul to receive others, you also open the door to negative energies. You must become a compassionate witness who is nonetheless steadfast. If you destroy yourself for the gift, that is not contribution, it is self-destruction. The greatest spiritual gift is sometimes not the ability you possess, but the humility you keep. When you think you have mastered it, you will lose it. You were not born to become a perfect copy of the world. You were born to become a unique, irreplaceable piece in the painting of infinity. We have passed through the dark alleys of the shadow, the closed doors of the unconscious, and the golden rules of synchronicity. But the final question remains, why? Why must you endure the pain of facing yourself? Carl Jung offered a revolutionary concept, the self. Unlike the ego, which is small and anxious, the self is the center of the total psyche, encompassing both consciousness and the unconscious. It is the image of wholeness. The journey to find the spiritual gift is actually the journey of the self wanting to actualize itself through you. When you reject your gift, you not only hurt yourself, you hurt the flow of life trying to pour through you. You become a dead knot, but when you accept and live with that gift, you become a channel. Viktor Frankl, the psychologist and Holocaust survivor, once said, "Man should not ask what the meaning of his life is, but rather must recognize that he is the one being asked." Your spiritual gift is your answer to life. If you are a person with keen intuition, your answer is truth. If you have the capacity for empathy, your answer is compassion. Life does not promise you wealth or fame for pursuing this gift, but it promises something 1,000 times more precious: wholeness. You will no longer feel like a lost fragment. Remember the image of the mosaic stone. Each of us is a small stone, rough, perhaps with sharp edges or cracks. Standing alone, we look ugly and meaningless. But when that stone is placed in the right position in the larger picture, the cracks become beautiful veins, the sharp edges become character. The spiritual gift is your position in that picture. You do not need to change your shape to look like another stone. You just need to find your right place. Awakening is not a destination. It is a continuous state of living. You will never finish individuation. Darkness will always return in new forms. Intuition will sometimes scare you. But that is okay. Courage is not never being afraid. Courage is knowing there is darkness, but still choosing to walk with your own light. Now I want you to stop. Turn off all surrounding noise. Take a deep breath. Look back at the journey we have just taken. Is there any truth among the things I said that made your heart skip a beat? Did a childhood memory suddenly rush back? Jung believed your personal unconscious is listening right now. It is waiting to see what you will do with this knowledge. Will you return to your normal life, put the mask back on, and forget everything? Or will you spend 5 minutes a day listening to the whispers from within? The choice is entirely yours, but remember, the spiritual gift is not infinitely patient. It can sleep again, but the price paid is the paralysis of emotion and the withering of the soul. Do not let your gift die in the dark. Let it live even if it makes you tremble. Especially when it makes you tremble, I want to ask you a very personal question, not to show off, but to admit to yourself. If there were no limits on money, status, or social judgment, what would you use your spiritual gift for? Who would you become? Leave that answer in the comments below. Do not think too much. Write the first thing that appears in your mind. Sometimes writing it down is the fastest way to manifest it. And if you found value in this video for your own spiritual journey, don't forget to like and subscribe. Your support is the motivation for me to continue dissecting deeper psychological topics. Thank you for patiently walking this long path with me. In a noisy world, having a quiet space to explore the inner self is a privilege. Remember, understanding others is intelligence, understanding yourself is enlightenment, conquering the world is strength, conquering yourself is greatness. I am your name. See you again in other profound journeys. Choose to live true, choose to be awake.